Alrighty, how's it going, guys? My name is Braden Friedel. I'm the Director of Growth here at the Baird Group, and I'm super pleased to have Katrina Hunt with me. She's going to go over kind of her story, why she got into real estate, and then give some tips out to those who are getting into the business, or if you're somebody in the business who's currently struggling. So I'll kind of start it off. For those of you who don't know, we had a team meeting this morning, and you talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to kind of just get your backstory and why you got into real estate, and why you made the decision you did to become an agent.
Yeah, so a little bit crazy. I'm also a mortgage broker, so I started on that side. In COVID times, I was working for Amazon and met someone who kind of took me under their wing from a lending standpoint, which on the lending side, you definitely need a mentor and someone to go through that with. And in 2023, December of 2023, I have to count backwards now. I got my real estate license and was going to kind of like work with her on her team, and it just didn't work out. And so I was a freshly licensed agent kind of a couple weeks before Christmas, and I had been doing lending for a few years. I kind of had my feet in the door there, and I just figured, why not try to go be a real estate agent somewhere? And so I got into it probably in a non-conventional way, but ended up falling in love with being in front of people versus just behind the screen, and getting to do what I call the fun part of like actually showing people houses instead of just being the bad guy all the time and talking through finances and interest rates and things like that. And now I have the best of both worlds. I get to do both of them. And so, it's been really fun.
Nice. Kind of to go into that. So what does it look like? Because I think a lot of people, they think, oh, you have to be one or the other, right? How does that kind of, because I think it's great that you have the background of being in mortgage, right? When you're talking to clients or walking them through a difficult transaction. How has that kind of benefited and helped you getting into like the selling side of things?
Yeah, it definitely made it easier. I knew what a purchase contract looked like. I knew what a real estate transaction was supposed to look like, so it made it easier. Now, had I jumped in and done both of them at the same time, I would have felt like I was trying to do too much. So if it is something where you're looking to do both and not just be a real estate agent and not just be a lender, I would say perfect one of them before you try to do the next one, because lending is like all guidelines, and like you could follow those guidelines to a T, but realistically there's so much more to it, and real estate takes up a lot of your time, and both of them at the same time, and trying to learn both of them, it can feel really like murky, and you don't want to ever be murky about anything. So perfect one of them, and I'm not perfect in either of them, but really get to a point where you feel comfortable talking to someone about one of them and then try to do both. Don't do them both at the same time.
Well, I have your stats written down, and they're really impressive. So you've only been an agent for 2.5 years, and you've closed 86 transactions, which for people who are listening, that is a ton, and that's way above the trajectory of where most agents land in their first 10 years in this business. Closed loans is 50, and you were licensed doing loans a little longer than real estate, but how important is scheduling for you? Because you just said, right, real estate takes up so much time. So how are you juggling 86 transactions but also 50 loans at the same time? That's like, to me, that's just nuts.
Well, my calendar is king or queen, but my calendar is the most important thing in my business. I have to make sure that everything is scheduled out, because if it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. And so I will schedule in personal time for myself, so making sure that I do still have some personal time scheduled in, but recognizing, for me at least, that like the business that I want to grow and the places that I want to be, which is not where every agent wants to be, and I think it's okay to recognize what you actually want to do and what your goals are, but recognizing that where I want to grow to has to be regimented, it has to be scheduled, and so making sure that I have kind of like appointments set aside and things like that set aside to where I can just fill people into the gaps and fill people into the blanks, and then making sure, I unfortunately / fortunately don't work a normal 40-hour work week. I usually work like a 60 to 80-hour work week, and so making sure that I'm okay with that, and understanding that my schedule is not going to be an 8 to 5 like a normal corporate position, but it's usually going to be an 8 to 5 and then also a 5 to 8 or a 6 to 8 to make sure that I can get all of my lending stuff done and make sure that I can get back to the clients that I need to get back to lending is a little more flexible because you can work that from anywhere. You
Yeah.
don't have to be in person with someone. You just need your laptop and some internet. So
the easy stuff.
Yeah, that's usually done in bed.
yeah, exactly.
Just laying down with the dogs. So.
Well, so you kind of touched on it, is like the scheduling aspect of it. I will say you are probably the hardest working person in the office, right? I come in, you're always here early. You're always one of the very last people to leave. And yes, you're coming and going because you're juggling a lot of appointments. But for like, what would be your advice to maybe a newer agent or somebody who doesn't really go into the office? Like, how has that helped grow your business?
Yeah, I think for me it was a matter of showing up for my business. If I was going to go get a job at a corporate company, a regular 9 to 5, 40-hour work week, they would expect me to be in the office every single day. So agents want to be agents because they want flexibility, which flexibility is great. And I look at the flexibility and, if I can close deals, I can take some time off and go and be with my family and do things in a little more of an unconventional way. I don't have to play into a 7 days of PTO or whatever from a business standpoint. But what I don't look at the flexibility in is if I want to build a business that is going to pay me like a corporate job, then I need to show up like it's a corporate job. And so I'm here in the office every single day, and the one thing I can give advice-wise is to plug in. Get in a place where you can plug into it, because if you are expecting yourself to work from home and make the calls from home and do all of that stuff, you have nobody to hold you accountable to actually doing that. And so what we've seen in like the likelihood of you actually doing it and doing it correctly versus just saying, oh yeah, I clocked in and did my work for the day, is you're not actually going to do it. You're probably going to make a call and then get distracted by your phone and do that for 5-10 minutes and then make another call. And at the end of the day, you didn't actually put any work towards your business versus if you show up and there's 15-20 other people that are doing it, you feel more apt to like, okay, I'm going to plug into my business. And then I got to be around people that were doing more than me. And I got to listen to their phone calls. I got to listen to what they were doing. And I got to see what their schedule looked like so that I could mold myself after them.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I like to share with agents when they're coming into the team that there's benefit to being in the office, because if you're newer, if you're somebody who's struggling, right, you can listen in on your phone calls. So you can listen in to Janelle's, who I just did a video with, right? Like, you can kind of listen and immerse yourself into the business without having business.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you like, I hear so many agents be like, well, I don't know the market statistics, and you don't have to be an expert in everything. But if you don't know the market statistics and you don't show up in the office to hear the market statistics, then where are you getting it? You're probably getting it from the news, just like your buyers are. So when your buyers say, oh, the market is crashing, you're like, yeah, it is, because that's all you've seen. And if you don't show up and see the results of what's actually truly happening in the market and plugging into like what's really happening, then how are you supposed to change the mind of your buyers, because you only have what your buyers have also.
Yeah, so I'd love to go off of that, because 2.5 years at 86 transactions, that's, again, it's just insane. How did you become the expert? Because that's not something you just wake up one day and you're like, I can do this, right?
Yeah.
So what did you have to do, and what did that look like for you to get the confidence to be in that position to, when you're talking to these 86, clients, right? You're the professional that they're asking you to be.
Yeah. Well, real estate is a humbling experience.
Yeah.
And so
it is.
I just put myself in a lot of situations where I would have to talk about it. And it helped that I had the lending background, so I at least knew what was happening on the real estate side. I could talk intelligently about interest rates in the mortgage market, but I've still plugged into places where they were talking intelligently about it, so that I could have deeper, more insightful conversations with my buyers. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
I plug into our training and our coaching outside of just our team to make sure that I'm staying up to date with what's going on in the market. And then I study it every single day. I always go and look at what's happening with interest rates. Why is that happening? And that way, when buyers bring it up to me or sellers bring it up to me, I can talk with them. But maybe the more humbling side of it was getting to work with sellers for the first time, because they're selling homes and they're dealing with a lot of money. And so, like, you have to walk in, and I just did a training with agents, and I'm like, you have to walk in with confidence and knowledge that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the second there's a crack in that confidence, and the second they think that you don't know what they're doing, you've lost them. And so it's a little bit of a fake it till you make it kind of strategy.
Yeah.
Like, I just show up and I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I sold my first house without literally knowing anything what I was doing with them, and I was just like, here's a house, let's buy it. And like, if you can tell them confidently what their next steps are, even if you don't necessarily know, like, you know what the next step is, but you might not know what's beyond that, but just tell them confidently what their next steps are, they start to follow your confidence.
Yeah. And so today at our team meeting, you said something that I thought was great, and it was about it's hard for an agent to say, hey, I want to get to be where you're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing multiple transactions a year and getting there, but it's like, how do you actually get to that place? And you mentioned finding the stepping stones, right?
Yeah.
Find the person who's doing one transaction, and then 5, and then 10. So it resonated with me because it's a reminder that you just can't jump from point A to point whatever. You have to take the steps to get there. Do you remember what those steps kind of looked like for you? Was it just surrounding yourself around those specific people that were already there, or was what did it look like?
Yeah, I had, and John mentioned this after the meeting, I had a little bit more of a benefit because we were in a smaller office. So there wasn't quite as many people around, there wasn't as much going on, and so you heard a lot more about each individual agent's transactions and what they were doing. There was only about, every day in the office, maybe like 5 people, and we were in a much smaller area, and so we heard more about it. I also came in underneath of Janelle, so she was my kind of tie to the team. I had done a transaction with her, and so for me it was, I want to be like her, right? So she was I wanted to be like her, still do. I want to do as much business and as much volume as she's doing, but recognizing and seeing the other people that were doing lower, I'm a competitive person by nature. I think you kind of have to be a little bit, but instead of like necessarily looking what they were doing, I started like just being like, okay, you're my competition now. If you're closing 3 deals in a quarter, how do I get 4 deals in a quarter to be better than you in a nice way, but in a good competition way? And I started just pegging everybody as like, I want to have as many transactions as that person did. And I started at 1. It was, I need to get 1 transaction in order to get 2 transactions, and I need to get 2 transactions in order to get 3. And I remember I had 2 closings in one day, and Michael was like, just wait until that is a reality almost always. And him kind of putting that in my head was like, okay, that's the next goal. Like, now I just need to make sure that I always have 2 under contract. And basically being like, once you have 1, you can't just ride that high and disappear. And I saw agents on our team do that. They would get a deal under contract and then they would just disappear. It's like, wait, where'd you go? You had the deal. And recognizing that, like, when Janelle had 1 under contract, she didn't go away. She was going out and finding her next one. And so understanding that, yes, 1 under contract is great and 1 closing is great, but you always have to look for your next deal, and you always have to look for your next transaction. And so that was kind of like my steps, is making sure that A, I was always kind of picking someone to compete against because I need it to push me forward, and B, making sure that I always had something under contract. And John's had many meetings with me where I cried in his office and been like, John, I have nothing going on. All my deals are closing out. And then the next week it's like, I have 5 deals under contract. And he's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, but there was nothing going on when I was in your office. And like, I just have learned to never be satisfied with where I'm at, and always keep growing to the next spot.
So that's prospecting, essentially, what you're talking about.
Yes.
So how important is that to your business? Like, is that something you time block to do every day? I talked to Cameron a little bit, and he was talking about how he makes a monthly amount of calls. Right? What does that look like for you? Yeah,
a little bit different now. But when I first started, I wasn't just spending time in the office blabbing. I was spending time in the office prospecting. And so now it is scheduled in and time blocked in. I have 2 hours every single day in the morning where I'm prospecting and following up with my clients. I do it in the morning because I know that if I wait until the afternoon, it's not getting done. Usually I have an influx of other stuff coming in, but between 9 and 11, I can usually get all of my prospecting done. My goal now is to just find 1 appointment every single day. I know if I can find 1 appointment every single day, usually it's a couple of appointments, hopefully, but if I can find at least 1 appointment every single day, then I move my business forward. If I prospected and I didn't get my appointment in those 2 hours, then I tack on more time. And that comes from, like, if you start, it's great to be like, okay, I'm going to make 100 calls.
Yeah.
But if you made 100 calls and you didn't talk to anybody and you only spent an hour doing that, why would you not spend another hour trying to find someone? And so when I first started, it was harder to have conversations and get them to go to an appointment and things like that. But if I didn't have anything else going on, I didn't have an appointment in the afternoon, I was in the office calling all day, prospecting all day, trying to find that buyer.
Yeah, and I was just talking to some of our newer agents. It's, we have so many more opportunities than you had when you started, right? Like we're now with Zillow Flex, we have Realtor.com. So it's like you take those opportunities and mix it in with the calling. It's just, you have to act on things. You can't just sit there, like you said. It's easy to say, oh, I'm going to make 100 calls today. Well, if you're not talking to anybody, you didn't work.
Right.
You just were clicking on a computer, right?
Yeah.
So do you factor it based off of talk-throughs then that you have per day or weekly, whatever that looks like?
Yeah, so one of, like, my turning points in my prospecting was contacts and connections. So looking at, typically it takes me about used to take me about 17 conversations to get to an appointment.
Okay.
So every single day, and I still do it, I have a little check mark thing on my desk, and every time someone picks up the phone, I just mark it off. And I know that if I'm at, like, 15, I just have to keep pushing, because on the other side of that 17 is going to be my appointment. And so it's not always, it's some days you just have a bad prospecting day, and no one picks up the phone,
it happens,
no one gets an appointment or things like that. But it's the repetitive nature of doing that every single day and making sure that I hit my 17 contacts every single day. That would get me to all of the appointments, and that is, like, what builds your business, and making sure that you're doing it repetitively. Because if I go out and I just have 17 contacts today and I don't get my appointment, I'm like, well, it didn't work, let me just not do it again. Then it's like, okay, I would have walked away from probably 80 of those transactions, right?
Yeah.
And been like, okay, well, because the prospecting didn't work that day, I'm just not gonna do anything. But in 2 years, you build 86 transactions by doing it repetitively and doing it over and over again.
Yeah, you have to be consistent. I think that's, like, a very common theme. I did a video with Michael. He talked about it. Janelle talked about it. You're talking about it. Consistency is key. It's why it's said. You mentioned something a little earlier about coaching. You rely on outside coaching, just outside of the team as well. How impactful has that been on your business?
Yeah, I think that individualized coaching is probably one of the most important things that I did. Still pay for it, still do it. It's an investment into my business, and I signed up for it, I think, in October of my first year, and at that point I'd maybe closed 3 deals, and it helped me to realize some of those numbers, right? The fact that it took 17 contacts to get an appointment, and it's individualized to what I'm doing and where I'm at. And I think that's the great part about coaching, is that they meet you where you are and they help push you forward to where you want to be. They can help you see the bigger picture. Whereas when you're on the team, it's great. You have a lot of people that are here that can help push you forward, but they don't know what your individualized goals are. They also don't dig into, like, what are you really doing every day?
Yeah.
And then there's a massive accountability piece to it, right? Like, you pay money for them, and for me, I didn't want to pay money and not do it. So it's you're putting the investment in, and then that's coming back in the way of deals and business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the accountability piece is priceless alone. Like, no one's gonna. Most people have a very hard time holding themselves accountable, and I think in our office we do have people who hold each other accountable, which is great. I think that's a big positive of being on a team. But again, like Michael had talked about it, it's you're learning from somebody who's already been in your shoes, and then they went beyond where you're currently at. So if you've already had somebody who's started where you started, done what you've done, and then kept growing from there, it's why not invest into that so that you don't make more mistakes, you don't waste money, you don't lose out on big transactions.
Right. It helps you get from A to Z much quicker than they got from A to Z. Exactly.
So in your business, right, because you're also on the mortgage side as well with selling on the real estate, what do you try and keep your business like 50-50, or is it more, how does that look for you?
Yeah, ideally it would be 50-50. The lending side is not my main focus anymore. Ideally it would be 50-50 just because that would be great from a business model standpoint. But I have spent the last year really growing my lending side. I've trained a new processor and put new things into place so that it runs smoother, because before it was just me, and it was like I knew that if I could take on more I would, but I couldn't find a way. I had a processor before that she did a lot of other deals, and I needed someone that was fully focused on me to make sure that my systems continued running, because once my systems break down, then like my schedule breaks down. I end up on the phone a lot more and doing a lot more things that I don't want to be doing. And so I think as that continues into place, it will be a little bit more 50-50. But it's definitely more real estate heavy right now.
Well, how important is it for a real estate agent to have that background? Not even necessarily that background. Let's just say have a good connection with the lender, or just have the basics understanding of that side of the business. I feel like a lot of agents kind of lack that. And I think it's kind of doing a disservice to their clients if they don't even really know the basics and can have a simple conversation around it.
Your lender partner is like probably the most important connection that you have, and that's not just me pitching myself, right? Like, get a really great lender partner and hold on to them for dear life, because I have seen some lenders that don't do a good job in this business. Even like I've had buyers that utilize lenders that weren't myself or our team, and I'm like, man, what is going on in this transaction? You want to make sure that you have someone that you can trust, because they are holding the key to whether or not that deal makes it to the closing table. Really, at the end of the day, if your buyer can't get lending, that's the one thing they need to be able to buy the house.
It's a done deal,
And so your lender partner is so important, and it's good to have really good communication. The reason I loved lending is because I'm a nerd. And so I loved like digging and learning about guidelines and doing all of that kind of stuff to better benefit our buyers, but also to better educate our real estate agents, because it is important to have at least a micro knowledge of what's going on the lending side, because you can help keep your buyers calm when your lender's coming back and asking for documents, because usually they're like, man, I've already given her a blood sample and a hair sample and everything else, I don't want to give them any more. And like, you can help keep them calm there, but also you can help overcome objections with buyers. So it helps you from like the standpoint of actually getting deals that maybe wouldn't have happened, but another real estate agent's going to go get that deal because they're going to help them see that they really can buy a home.
I think the communication piece is big, right? It's crazy because my job, right, is recruiting, and I call so many agents a day, and nobody picks up the phone, right? And it's mind blowing to me, because that's like the one thing you should be doing. And I know too. It could be a deal, it could be a potential client, it could be, whatever it is, right? But for you, it's crazy because I see you working so hard and you never miss a phone call. How do you balance that?
I don't. Balance is a myth. It's kind of like what I've said over the last couple of years. I don't. And if I do miss a phone call, I have to get back to it as quickly as possible, right? The times I miss a phone call, it's usually during my prospecting times, because I let those go to voicemail, and I have a voicemail that says I'm in a meeting from 9 to 11, just so that I can focus on my prospecting still. But like the opportunity to pick up a phone and talk with a buyer, to pick up a phone and talk with your real estate agent partner that's on the other side, it's so important. And like, if I am just ignoring my phone calls and ignoring my text messages from people, they won't come back to me, and they won't utilize me to help them with their real estate clients. And so it's important to have that communication, and there's no balance in it, unfortunately. I just have to be available.
Well, and too, right, like, people, it's a myth. You get into real estate for flexibility, but the busier you get, the less flexibility you have, because you're on the phones, you're negotiating deals, you're in a meeting, you're at a listing appointment, trying to juggle all these different hats that you have to wear. I think one thing that I want to kind of go over with you is what would be like maybe two pieces of advice you would give to somebody who is thinking about getting into this business? Right now, the market's hard, but I say that, and you've just done 86 transactions in a tough market, right? What would be like the two things you would give to somebody?
Yeah, as cheesy as it sounds, plug into the right space. I was an in-house lender for a real estate team before I came here, so I saw another team. I saw how they ran, and nothing on them. They're great, but they weren't there to train the agents. I've joked several times. I don't know how. Like, some agents have won listing presentations or won buyers or done anything without the resources that we have with our team, because it's crazy what we have. And find the right team and find the right place to be plugged into, because you could waste a lot of time being in the wrong place. And so that doesn't necessarily mean join our team. I want people to join our team because I think we're the best, but I think, like, if you don't find the place that plugs in and is actually going to train you and teach you how to do real estate, you're going to feel like you're floundering. Because real estate is a lot bigger than just, oh, I have a buyer and I'm going to show them pretty houses. I wish it was just that, because that would be great.
Reality TV, right?
Yes. Exactly. It's more than selling sunset. It's more than fake phone calls and things like that. There's so much more that goes into it. And if you're not plugged into the right space, it's really easy to do one deal and be discouraged. And it's really easy to have one deal fall apart and just be like, well, that was the deal that I was resting my hat on, and now I'm gone. And then my second piece is, don't look at the splits. Look at what you get for it.
I couldn't agree more.
And, like, again, it might sound crazy because I've done 86 transactions, and it might just sound like our team is amazing, because it's because they are. Like, I would not go anywhere else for 100%, because at the end of the day, I get so much more for what I put into this company and what our company puts into each one of us. I get to do 86 transactions.
It makes it possible.
100% of zero is still zero. And so don't look at what you're going to make at the end of the day. Look at what's possible with what they're giving me.
And I think that's something I have to battle with a lot is, well, this company's, this is their splits, this is this. And it's like, well, that's great, but what are you getting, right? Like, you have to ask those questions and actually look into what's being provided, because, like you just said, you could go somewhere and get 100% of your commission. Well, now you're going to have to outsource everything that's provided to the team, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to cost you more than it would of just coming, like, to somewhere like us, right? So, I think that's like a really great point, is 100% of zero is still zero. So.
And I was just training our listing class on the same thing, basically, with sellers, right? Like, we show our value and we do a lot, and we charge more than the average agent out there is going to charge from a fee standpoint with selling. We do a lot more than the average agent as well. And one team might charge more as far as splits go, but, like, our team does a lot more than the average team is going to do. You're going to get a lot more training. You're going to get a lot more marketing. You're going to get a lot more leads and opportunities than the average place is going to give you. So.
And I mean, like you just said, they're going to have more opportunity. Look at everybody who's come onto the team. Jackson, prime example, he's just closed his 4th transaction, right? That's way more than most agents do in their entire first year, and he's only been with us for 5 months or so. So it's really cool to see. Okay, my last thing I want to end with is, I'm sure some possible clients are going to watch this. What is your prediction for the next 12 to 24 months of the real estate market? And then what would you kind of encourage them to do in that time?
Such a good question. I wish I had, like, the little magic 8 ball that tells me exactly what's going to happen, but all I can look at is what's happened in Colorado in the past, right? So you have a lot of people out there being like, oh, a crash is coming, something bad is going to happen. We see real estate interest rates coming down and leveling out, and so I think we've seen a lot more normalized market. Over the next 12 months, I definitely see more sellers selling their houses. We have so many people right now that bought a house during COVID and have a really low interest rate and are growing out of it, are hitting a point where they can't live in that home anymore, but are maybe kind of like backwards on like where their equity's at because they bought it during COVID. And so see a lot more of those sellers looking to sell. We are seeing more short sales, so more opportunities to get a property at a lower price, but things are still hard. What I'm hoping for is in 2 years, it's not going to be as friction in the market. We're definitely seeing a balancing of the market, but if you're a client, recognizing that selling might be a little bit harder, but buying is an incredible opportunity probably for the next 12 months. So, and then I think after 12 months, as the rates continue to level out a little bit more, we're going to see it still be a really great opportunity for sellers again.
While you're here, can you just explain to a possible buyer watching this, why is it an incredible opportunity? Because the objection I hear from friends and people that I know is, well, I'll just wait till rates go back down. What happens when that happens, right?
Well, if you're waiting for rates to come down, I always make the joke that, like, if you're being smart and waiting for rates to come down, somebody else is being smart and waiting for rates to come down. And so really honestly, you are playing the dumb game, because you and about 1,000 of your other friends are sitting waiting on the sidelines, more than 1,000. But as rates come down, we see more buyers enter the buying pool. And when we see that happen, we see multiple offers on homes. You see an influx. Like I said, there's an influx of people waiting to move for rates to come down. There's like this bubble that is waiting to burst, but it's not the bubble that other people are talking about. There's this bubble of buyers that are like waiting for that to happen. And when they get released into the market, it's going to be a feeding frenzy for less listings.
Just like COVID.
So rates might not be 2%, which is going to suck because you're not only are you going to pay more for the house, but you're also going to pay more than a 2% interest rate. And so I just had it. I had a $30,000 over asking price offer on a property. So it's still out there. It's still happening. It's just not being talked about in the news. And so, but as rates come down, you're going to continue to see that multiple offer situation. And so right now, if you can find a house that has been sitting, sellers have to sell. They're not just selling for fun in this market. So those sellers typically have to sell. It's a good opportunity to get it at a lower price or get them to buy down your interest rate for you. There's still temporary rate buy downs around that can help your interest rate for your first couple of years. And you can be in your home and just refinance into that lower rate while everybody else is having a feeding frenzy in the market.
I know it's something you hear often is, oh, I'm just going to wait. But you don't actually understand what that looks like and what's going to actually happen to the market when, 1,000 is on the extreme low end of buyers who are sidelined, extreme low end. So what that looks like, I think it's great to have your perspective of being like, hey, this is what it actually looks like.
And then, like, if I can talk to sellers for a second, it's the same thing is happening. Again, I said I just got a seller $30,000 over their list price. There are buyers that are waiting for the right home to come on the market. And your home could be that right home. It's just important that we price it to be that right home, because if we miss the market, that's when you're sitting. That's when you're not selling, and that's when you're getting frustrated. But if you price it right, then buyers are waiting for it. They're ready for it, especially right now. So don't wait on that side either just because you want it to be a better market to sell in. It's still an incredible opportunity as sellers. We still have low inventory. Granted, it's more inventory than we've had for years, but it's still low. So it's important to get on the market now too.
Well, and to go with that is, I think a great point is, for was it maybe like 3 or 4 sales meetings in a row, you were having a really hard time getting some of your buyers under contract because they were always competing on multiple offer houses that were selling, like, I think you said one was what, 50,000 above?
50,000 above asking price.
So that just goes to show that when the right house pops up for a seller or for a buyer, that the sellers can capitalize on that. If it's the right property and everybody sees what it's worth, that still happens. I mean, if you told somebody who's not in the real estate market that there's still properties selling 50K above ask, they're gonna be they're gonna think you're lying. But no, it still happens. It just, like you said, it has to be priced right, and there has to be strategy around it.
And we come with both of those things. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm glad we're able to chat. Anything else you want to throw to any clients? No,
I mean, I just want to reiterate for agents, like, plug yourself into somewhere that you see that you're going to be comfortable with, and make that decision, because if I could go back to when I very first started, I've learned a lot where I was before, right? I grew a ton as a person, but if I could have started where I started 2.5 years ago, I would be totally different now. And just think about that before you fully make a decision.
I'm going to just clip that and like throw it on my Instagram.
Perfect.
There we go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.